one-man show. It's doing this all a lot. Go for it. Yeah. And of course, next week you'll return to being the Soryu show. So that'll be nice. Good to have him back. Well, my freak abilities, currently I can do it, so.
Do you get to come back first? Do you come back?
This one is older.
Is it? Yeah.
Cooler?
So it's possible.
There's a button that I mistakenly pressed in the past that says don't press whatever you do.
Do not touch other hidden buttons.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the one.
You want one more?
Yeah.
No,
Right. And there's a candidate even, right, social medicine, they're doing it.
My gosh, you got a jacket on and a hat on and you need the heat on top of that? Chilly girl.
Jennifer, can you help me remember just to turn that off at the end, because I'm likely to forget. Yeah, as people have pointed out, I'm a one-man show today. People are on retreat, and I'm kind of supporting everyone else, so welcome. So I'm sure I'd love to talk to you all afterwards, but I also have to break down afterwards, so I could use your help as well. Feel free to send me an email to let me know what you thought. Michael at centerformindfullearning.org. So it's good to see all of you. And my name is Michael, and I am a resident at the Center for Mindful Learning. Been there for about 1.5 years, and we're looking for new residents. So if you're interested, come and join us. I know we have people joining us on the web as well. So welcome to all of you, including my mother, who I'm dedicating this sit to, which I'll explain in a little bit. So, hi Mom, hi Dad. Gotta love the internet.
Yeah.
I can live a state away and you can still see me. Yeah. So, Ben was not sure what I was going to be teaching, because I just came back from a solo retreat myself. I was in a cabin in Johnson meditating for about a week, and that was good. Good practice was done by the no self that is sometimes referred to as Michael. But I actually won't be talking about that too much, because it occurred to me during the retreat that the quality of practice that I had, I think, was enabled by the work that I'd done before the retreat. And in particular, for the last couple of months, I've been trying a technique that I'll be sharing with you today called mindful review. Some of you may have done it. Some of you may never have heard of it. I had heard of it and resisted practicing it for many months before it became clear to me that something needed to change. And that mindful review was a really good way to make that change. But before I get into that, I'd like to tell you a little story about my childhood. When I was a child, my mother and I had this nice little ritual in the evening where she would ask me what the best parts of my day were and what the worst parts of my day were. And then she would tell me the best parts of her day and the worst parts of her day.
I do that now.
Yeah, it's great. And just a nice ritualized way of sharing your day. And, you know, she had been at the office, and I don't know where I'd been, but, you know, we could kind of converge on our days and get a little sense of where each other was at. And, you know, it was really nice sometimes if, you know, we'd spent the day together and went out and did something, and the best part for both of us was the same thing. So, and mindful review is a little bit like that. It's taking a look back at your day and using that as material for improving the quality of your life and also your mindfulness and meditation practice. And it's a technique that is seen in several traditions. Allegedly, Harada Roshi does it every day. Soryu does it every day. Harada Roshi is Soryu's teacher. I also have learned about it from Upasaka Culadasa, just as Nick enters. My Dharma friend of Upasaka Culadasa, who got us a copy of it. His wonderful book that came out last year, The Mind Illuminated. Just go and buy a copy today. You'll thank me for it. You'll thank Nick for it. It's not the same teaching style as Soryu or Shinzen. It's a different style. That's been a good compliment for me to the way that Soryu teaches. And so you can read his presentation of it. It's Appendix E on Mindful Review. If you'd like, that's a really good presentation of it, but I'll just be kind of feeling it out my own way that I've cobbled together, which is partially inspired by Culadasa and partly by Soryu and partly just from me doing it for a couple months. And yeah, when Soryu left, I made a commitment to him. We all had this ceremony where we all made a commitment to him, just as a kind of way of saying goodbye and good luck for his solo retreat. And my commitment to him was to practice this technique regularly. And the reason for that was I felt like sometimes I get stressed, just like everybody else, and that's my thing. And that was, kind of coming to a head just before Soryu left. And I had a feeling that doing this technique regularly while he was gone would kind of help give myself, a way out of that, and also have some feedback without a teacher there, because I would be reviewing my actions regularly. So I think I don't have anyone to attest to this because I'm a one-man show today, but I think if the residents were here, they would say that there's been a really noticeable shift for me in the way that I've shown up at the program, like during the day and the parts where we're speaking. Just a lot calmer and kinder and more focused, and I would directly attribute that to this practice. So it's been a really powerful technique for me that I'm excited to share with you. I think for a long time it seemed really kind of contrived to me to do what I'm going to lead you through doing, but that was just resistance. And when I tried it, I saw one of the realest, most real impacts on my practice and my life that I've seen from doing this practice for, a year and a half at CML, and also for over 6 years as an individual meditator, which is, something. So it's not some big white lights in the sky or voice talking to me results. It's just me being happier and being a better person. But that's a very real and a very important impact. So yeah, and the kind of principle of it is just that you review your day and use that in a way that helps your daily life, and that also shows up in your mindfulness practice, because when you start cutting through some of the issues that you tend to be having repeatedly, then you're not getting distracted or emotionally caught up during your sit by things that you've done that you regret or wish you'd done better, or something like that, which is a real problem. You go down to sit in the evening and it's been a busy, long day, and there were 3 or 4 things that happened that just did not go well, and following the breath or whatever it is that you're doing seems like too much at that point. That would describe many of the sits that I've had, at least first half an hour, 40 minutes before the mind gets settled. And So you see that the mind kind of settles sooner, and you can kind of get right to what you're trying to do, which we'll do some, hopefully later, some more traditional mindfulness practice later in the session. So with that in mind, I will begin a quick session of mindful review and give it a shot, and we'll see where it takes us. And so as always, just take a moment to check in with your posture. Make sure that you're relaxed. There's a very strong emphasis on having a straight back, but it's just as, or possibly even more important, to make sure that your muscles are relaxed. In meditation, relaxation is a technical term that means that we notice if we have tense muscles, and then we relax them. So just take a moment to find some relaxation in your body. And we'll be doing some visualization and mental talk for this technique. So if you normally have an eyes open practice, I'd like to invite you to try an eyes closed practice for this time, although either's fine. And bring to mind your day. Or if it happens that you just woke up just before this, you can use recent events in your life. That'll work too. Consider your day, and we're going to go roughly chronologically, but if something comes up in the afternoon before the morning, that's okay. You can trust that. It's not a strict rule to go chronologically. Just consider what happened today. See in your mind and narrate to yourself with your inner voice what you did today. Now that you have kind of a sense of the chronology of your day, pick out one or two or three events in the day that you'd like to work with. What we're looking for is something that we feel proud of, something that we did well, whether it was an action or a thought or an intention, or even the way that we moved our body or that we spoke. Something that we're proud of. Or maybe we're looking for something that happened today that we're not so proud of. It didn't go so well. Maybe it was a conversation with someone that ended poorly, or we said something that we regret. Maybe we made a mistake. And as a third option, there's also any kind of action in body or mind or words that we're not sure if we feel proud of it or if we're feeling regret, but we think it bears further investigation. Maybe a conversation with someone that ended poorly, but we may or may not have done the right thing. All of these three kinds of events are good material to work with for this technique. And trust your own judgment of what's significant that happened today. It's almost like waking up in the morning and remembering your dreams, and maybe there's 5 or 6 dreams that you remember, but there was one that really stood out. That's the one that you want to work with. And so as you pick your first event to work with, and feel free to switch events at any time during this guidance, as you pick something to work with, really bring that to mind. Visualize, where you were, what the room looked like. If there was someone else or a group of people there, what they looked like. Bring all of the details to mind. Make it as vivid as you possibly can. With those details in mind, consider also how mindful you were during this event. How aware were you of what was happening? Both externally and internally. Now that you've considered the details and in particular how mindful you were, you're now going to turn to using this vivid memory that we've brought to the forefront of our subjective experience. We're going to use it to deepen our mindfulness practice and to improve the way that we show up in the world, so that we're a better person and someone that we can be proud of. The way that we do that is we consider whether this action was something wholesome that we should feel proud of, or something that was not the best thing that could have happened at that time. Whether it was an earnest mistake or something really wrong that we did intentionally. And if it's something that you feel proud of, really bring that to the forefront of your experience. By that I mean, tell yourself verbally why that was the right choice and why you did the right thing. Visualize in your mind yourself making that choice with that intention. And also check in with your body to see if there's any feeling of pride or joy or confidence. And really feel that. For me, the verbal is the best way to start. I really say, you know, I'm proud of myself. I did the right thing there. I had this intention, and I go through it and say what it was, and that was hard, but I did it and felt good, and compliment myself in an earnest way that's thorough, which is, you might say, the way that you would want to be complimented if someone had seen that and also felt the same way. Just a really thorough, good pat on the back makes me feel good. And then if I do that earnestly enough, my body starts to feel good. And so really cherish that and celebrate that you did something well. Meanwhile, if you have something that you're not so proud of, it's important that we use this opportunity to still feel good in the same way that we do with something that happened in the past that was positive. And the way that we do that is we clearly see the way that we made a mistake or did something imperfectly, whatever it was, and we set an intention for the future. For example, if someone is angry with me, I will try to be mindful and calm. And we see ourselves doing that in the future. Maybe a similar situation. We visualize that. We say that intention verbally. And we take the opportunity to feel good, because even though something happened that was difficult or frustrating, or we made a mistake or even really hurt someone, we're setting the intention to do that kind of thing differently in the future. And so we've learned from our experience and can feel good about that. It's not an exercise in shame or self-punishment. It's a chance to learn from our mistakes and do better in the future. So take a moment, whether it's something you feel proud of or something that needs to work on in the future, to really process that visually and verbally and also in your body, so that you can feel good about that event or your intention for the future with that kind of situation. If you'd like, you can turn to another event that you selected to work with, or really keep diving into this one. They're both good. And it's not so important that you cover every event that happened during the day or every meaningful thing, but just that you really thoroughly work with what you feel needs to be worked with. That you celebrate your successes and learn from your mistakes. So just take a few moments to trust yourself and your own intuition of what will be useful for you. One thing that can come about as you review your actions is a realization that you need to do something concretely. Maybe it's making an apology or calling a friend to tell them something important. And if that comes up, just commit yourself explicitly in your mind to doing that thing. I really regretted the way that I talked to this person earlier today. Bet their feelings are hurt right now. And so I'm going to make a thorough and earnest apology to them as soon as I possibly can. Maybe even right after the sit. So that I can rectify the situation to the best of my ability. And that's also an opportunity to feel good because not only are you doing the right thing, but you're strengthening your power of commitment. That you're the kind of person who does what they say they will do. So it's a very simple technique with many possibilities for exploration. Kind of take it whatever way feels good to you. This time I'd like to open it up to any kind of questions or comments about how that went for people. Would be helpful. Ted?
I found that I had a real hard time following that. There were so many different options. You allowed us to do this or that, or to have a positive experience, unpleasant experience, or one in the middle.
Yeah.
And then there was ways to work with all of those.
Yeah.
And so I had a hard time really understanding what we were doing.
Yeah.
Because there was so much of that.
Yeah. So the reason it's so complicated is because I've done this for a couple months, and I've kind of found what works for me. And my life is messy, so what works for me is messy. But in principle, it's a very, very simple technique, which is we're just reviewing our day or recent events in a way that will benefit us in the future. So we're working with the past to help the future. And in particular, the kind of two ways that this can help us is to make us more mindful during the day, which helps our sitting practice. And it can also, make specific changes in how we show up in the world. And that's also part of the complexity, is that I don't really have a sense of what's going on for everyone here in their lives. For me, as I said earlier, I tend to get stressed out or angry. And so one of the really big things that I cut out by doing this technique is, so I'm currently in the role at CML where I have to kind of enforce discipline, which is a very tricky job. In any situation, parents know that, bosses know that, but I also live and work and meditate with the people that I'm in charge of disciplining, when it needs to be done. And so I was having a hard time doing that skillfully. People would be late, and I like being on time, so that was hard for me. And so one of the things that happened was I recognized, hey, when people are late, my stuff comes up and I get angry. And so I need to watch out for that. If someone's late, yeah, they're late and that's a problem, but also it's a problem if I get really excessively angry about that. And so just immediately I saw, by once or twice doing this technique of reviewing my actions and working with that for an intention for the future, I saw very immediate changes where I'd be calm and clear, like you're late or whatever needed to happen. Sometimes actually it was fine that someone was late because they were doing something very important. That I was like, okay, that's important. You should do that. Anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good thing, and I want to be able to do it well. And so in order to do it well, I kind of have to know what I need to do. So first you review your day, and then you find if anything, any single event, whether it's positive or negative, comes out.
Exactly.
Jumps out to you.
Yep.
And
you just dive in.
You work on. So then you say, okay. Then you use verbal thinking, image thinking, and process your emotions as you work on reviewing that. And having done so, then you sort of like make commitments to the future of not doing a certain thing or doing a certain thing. Did I catch it?
Yeah, I mean, you can take a very algorithmic approach, which is what I was kind of teaching. And but I think if the simplest thing is just use your day to make choices about the future and trust yourself about what needs to happen.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah, that's the simplest possible way.
The important thing is to
put
go
it
through the events of the day and see what jumps out, and then dig into it.
And just dig into it.
And then optionally apply something to the future.
Yeah. So, and actually, maybe if you don't mind, or someone else can pop in if Ted minds, we could kind of work through something that came up for someone,
Sure.
just to kind of work with it a bit more authentically. So I find different events, you know, there's really a lot of options, and you kind of have to learn to trust your intuition on what you need, because you're the only person who knows what your goals are and what problems you're facing. And that's comforting because it's in your own head and it's not someone else telling you you have this problem or this thing that you need to work on, which happens a lot. And I find challenging, but yeah.
So what popped out for me was something I did today that was very different than yesterday. Like I had to really switch gears on something yesterday and on my day. And I fought it every step of the way. Created my own suffering around the day. It was one of those things where I just couldn't get traction on switching gears. You know, it was very frustrating. And so the first thing that popped up to me today is, again, I had to, right before I was going to go outside and do something, you know, a project, you know, but I was waiting for someone, it started to rain. And it was, you know, very similar to yesterday in a way. I mean, there's a lot more stuff around it, but in the simplest form. And so what popped out to me when I was sitting here is like, wow, so that was a really positive thing because, you know, I really easily switched gears today, knowing yesterday I caused so much of my own suffering. And so I took a little time to commend myself because that's a work in progress probably for the rest of my life. It's a hard thing for me to switch gears sometimes. And so it's like, oh, that's great, you know. And so I think for me, doing this was really an opportunity because I can be so hard on myself sometimes. An opportunity to pat myself on the back and say, wow, look at that. So different than yesterday. And that was really great, you know. And then, you know, as I did that, I thought, okay, you know, that's really good to notice, you know, moving into the future that I have a clear choice. You know, create more suffering for myself or, you know, hey, okay, shift gears, you know, and I'm probably going to visit both again. But then I had more time, you know, so I kind of let the day go on, and there was something that wasn't a horrible thing, but it was something I said to someone that I didn't really need to say, that I think made them question themselves. And it was kind of a small thing, but I noticed when I revisited, I was like, wow, you know, I could probably clean that up, you know. I could probably go back to that, you know, person and say, well, you know, I don't even know why I said that, you know, because it really was unnecessary. You know, it didn't really serve much purpose. And I think it made, you know, it made you feel a little insecure around what you were doing. And I don't know why I did it, but I did it. Maybe it was, you know, I've been having a hard couple of days because of something going on with my family. So I have a little extra baggage, you know. And so that was probably it. It was probably just, you know, an unconscious opportunity to make myself feel a little better about something. I don't know, you know, like I say, without going into all the craziness. So for me, you know, the first thing that came up was a thing that, hey, look at that. And then the second one was like, could do that better. You know, could clean that up, you know. And then I just left it at that. You know, I was like, then it was time to, but so I took one of each, you know. Well, I didn't specifically, those are what came up for me, you know.
But you really, you know, took what I shared and made it your own in a way that was authentic. And also I think it's good just to celebrate something that you did well. Kind of doing the technique here. But,
and I didn't, you know, I had my eyes closed, but I heard you pat yourself. So I was like, you know, I just took that in for myself.
Exactly. And that's what you did well. It's like in both cases, even with the thing that was, you know, a slight mistake or, you know, whatever you want to call it, it's still an opportunity to feel good. Soryu was very clear with me when he instructed me on this, like, don't use this. I'm also pretty hard on myself. And so don't use this as a chance to get bogged down and how you're terrible and nothing's ever going to go well. And everything's bad because I already do that. So
Right, well, and to look to the future, you know, for me, which is another thing I always have to revisit is think before I speak. Just take another breath before you comment on something and take a moment to, you know, to quickly ponder whether it's going to serve anybody. You know? So
I think they did definitely draw on some of the things that I suggested, but in general, what you really demonstrated there is just kind of reviewing your day and then using it in a way that will be beneficial to you. And I mean, it's worth noting that you kind of left out some of the specifics. So I don't, if you want, Ted, we can maybe ask someone for a really specific event that could be helpful, or maybe you have a sense of.
Well, I could throw them out there.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's work with it.
Well, I had two. First, let me answer this, because one of them I really wanted to work on, and it was my really relevant event today, although it wasn't really a thing that happened today. It was like I was meditating all day, and I was working with a large decision that I have to make that is around my work situation and everything. I have to make a hard decision and then maybe be firm with some people, discipline some people. You know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that was a thing that I could use this for. You know, because I think I worked on it well, but I still feel like, oh, maybe this technique could help me sort of like look at it in a different angle.
And so just a quick clarifying question, were you using the decision-making algorithm with this decision, or just kind of it came up as a reflection during the sit?
And
just so people know, the decision-making algorithm is something that Ted has helped.
I didn't.
Is that deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, deal. Yeah. It's something that Soryu's taught.
I didn't use it. No, but I sort of, I came about my resolution mindfulness, so basically the same thing.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with this decision-making algorithm, in that like that's an algorithm that you can use, but the intention is to make a decision mindfully. And so there's a lot of ways you can go with that. But I find that they're different techniques, but they're definitely complementary, because they're concerned with bringing mindfulness to action. And so one thing that's worth noting is, I think there's kind of like 3 tiers of what you can work with in this technique. And the first is just gross actions, like I punched someone, or I dropped a book, or had a conversation that was difficult.
But this is okay to work with this type of thing, because I'll go into it if you'd like.
Just 1 second though, but it can also come into something like a thought or an intention. Just, you're sitting there being quiet, and it looks like you're not acting, but you have a thought that's like, oh, I really don't like that person, or whatever it is. That's something that you can work with too. If you feel, I find I kind of have to deal with the big actions first before I can get to the, I had this random thought come up that I really want to work with. But anyway, so the reason I mentioned that is it sounds like you might have had some thoughts that we could use this technique with during this, kind of reviewing what you need to do. You might have had a thought that was, maybe you saw something from someone else's perspective that you really want to celebrate that, or you had kind of a negative, unnecessary thought about someone.
I had 2. So I had the topic that I was working on all day long, which I think went really well. Went really well. So that's a positive thing to practice. And then there's actually doing something about it next week, so I could sort of apply myself somehow there. The other thing is, after I did that, I went and sort of picked up my daughter from what she was doing, and then gave her advice before I gave her a chance to really tell me what was going on, which didn't work so well. And so I spent some time actually working with that, because I wasn't sure if I could work on the thing that I
right, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I made the commitment that, I'm going to let her talk some more before I open my yap. And so that was good. I think that worked well.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about
The other one.
the other one.
Yeah.
How would I work with that?
Yeah. So what comes to mind for me is I actually had something similar happen today that I worked with when I was leading it. Is I did something that was unusual that I hadn't necessarily done before or frequently, and I just kind of took the time to celebrate that I did that. And so for you, you really took the time to work through this decision about what you should do. And so it wasn't maybe a particular moment that didn't go well or that you did really well, but just the general intention and time that you devoted to really doing a thorough job on this.
I think I practiced really, really diligently today and got to clarity and was very satisfied for a long period today.
Yeah. And you were alone, so no one could tell you, hey, Ted, you did a great job on that, which it sounds like you did.
Yeah, I felt.
But you're celebrating that for yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, maybe it has something to do with having not the best exchange with my dog, not terrible, but I could do better. To feel like, oh, okay, well maybe it's not so clear. Maybe what I do next week is not, maybe I have a little bit of doubt now.
Oh, they're like kind of blurring together where.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I have doubt about this other one.
Yeah.
But I was so clear on earlier.
Well, I think that what you said about your interaction with your daughter was great. You assessed the situation and made a clear intention for the future. And I think regardless of what the particular decision is with, what's going on at work and so on, I want to celebrate the fact that you took the time to really do some thinking about it. And, maybe you'll decide to do what you did and maybe you won't. But in any case, I think that's, you seem to think you feel good about it.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You're disciplined occasionally, and sometimes you have an issue where it's like, well, I'm not really sure what I should do here. So I'm going to work with this one when I sit. So you sit on it and you become clear. And you're like, okay, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
Now in my experience, it's like this. It's like sometimes, yes, that is actually what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I was clear when all I had was a cushion and closed eyes.
Yeah.
But now I'm dealing with this person.
Yeah.
And they've just brought this whole other perspective.
Yeah, right.
And I'm clinging on to this thing that, I got directly from heaven because I'm on heaven.
That must be right then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So,
Yeah, so there's two things there, right, that are different from the cushion. One is that it seems like there's new information and a new perspective. And then there's also the person that's coming with the perspective. Neither of those things were there when you were on the cushion.
Yeah.
And so for me, what's been really important is, in this particular kind of theme is to consider I don't know about you, but usually I think I'm right. I think my perspective is the good and true one. And, that's kind of why I'm in the job that I'm in. But that aside, it's, so sometimes what I have to do is I have to say, you know what, it's true. This person is late. They shouldn't be late. We value being punctual. They're late. It's my job to tell them they're late. But there's also the person, they're coming from something that, they have their own stuff, and maybe there's a really good reason that they were late, like a really good one, which has happened. Someone, anyway. And then also just the fact that they're kind of grounded in their own perspective of why it's okay that they're late, or they might have just forgotten or whatever it is. And then also to even, so there's me and there's them, and then there's also the way that I show up in the interaction with them. Am I going to say, you're late? Or am I going to say, you're late, please don't be late? A nicer, more moderate way of bringing it up. Yes, so I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a value to really coming to clarity about what you think about the situation. And there's a value to adapting to the information and their perspective and the person in a way that's skillful. And sometimes that happens in a fraction of a second, where you see this person is really depressed right now, or they're really happy about something that's completely irrelevant, or whatever it might be. And you kind of have to use the same kind of moment-to-moment clarity that you work with in your mindfulness practice to just notice that about that person. And again, this is not like, it really depends on the situation, but I'm sorry, I'm not conveying this clearly, but.
No, you guys have a good point. I think you guys have a good perspective.
That's important.
Yeah, and I think just before we move on to Jesse, just to really point out that when you were talking about what you worked with, I think you do have a sense of what the technique is and what to do. And, what you were working with was difficult and not clear and complex, which these things usually are. And so I think continued practice of the technique, just reviewing what happened and seeing how you're going to work with that. You have all the skills that you need to do that skillfully.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of like, let's go to the replay, and use your practice over again, to look at it more carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the details are very important, just like really immersing yourself in it. But Jesse?
Well, I experienced going deeper. In other words, that there was superficial experiences that I would evaluate or go into with your practice. And then in this conversation, I realized, oh, that wasn't it at all. And went deeper, and I wanted to share a little bit of it because I think it might be helpful. There was a situation where, I'm starting out not well and fatigued, so they're in a situation that is a collective, non-directed gathering, and I'm feeling a need for connection. Okay, so here's people. I'm feeling a need for connection. I'm tired. I'm sitting in the environment with the people, and I find myself judging. And so that's what I wanted to bring up at when you said find something good or not so good. I immediately went to, oh, that was so good that I was able to have that very satisfying experience with that one person. But then if I look deeper, I see that I was judging. And I was saying, oh, I want to be with that person, but not that person. And definitely not that person. And then somebody's requesting a ride home. Oh, it's one of those that I'm not as fond of. But couldn't it be the one that I'm fond of, or something like that? And so I went. So rather than the initial experience, I started to recognize after the fact that this judgment needs to stop. That the judgment needs to be looked at. If I want to get to the place of open-heartedness and community and connection and love. So therefore, it was very interesting. And what happened was there was a sting at the end of when I left, because the person who I connected to had gone and just left. And then I was about to leave and realized that irregardless of the, nice that people do, I could tell that, they didn't care so much about me. It's like they were ready to oh, you're still here? Oh, like they did the nice thing, but I really didn't care. And I said, oh, well, that's that's a good, interesting kick in the butt, because I was judging them.
Mm-hmm.
So, for whatever it's worth, I think that you could go deeper with this, and I think that it's possible to see what's there that's easy to see and easy to work with. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, that's hard, because I don't know how to let go of that judgment, you know. But I guess that's the technique, is to go with what's really hard, you know. And at the same time, I realize I've made headway with a lot of people that, you know, I was judging. And now I feel like, oh, I'm not judging anymore, and feel much more open-hearted. And exactly what I want is this open-heartedness. So there you go.
Oh yeah, that was great. I think I really like that you saw like both the circumstances and then what was under that. You know? And that's eventually like, I didn't do anything today personally that I'm really, you know, I don't think anyone's mad at me or
Right.
not yet. I still got time. Which is kind of what I had to work with the first few weeks I was doing, to be honest. That's kind of gone down. But, you know, there's still always this kind of like, what's the intention there? There's plenty of things I did today that's like, ooh, that intention, even though no one's mad at me or, you know, the world hasn't collapsed, there's something to work with, or, you know, an intention to celebrate. Like the one that just came up for you of an intention of being connected and wholehearted, that's worth celebrating. And I think just a quick piece of advice is that with the, you know, phenomenon of judgment or really anything else that we notice that isn't going so well is just noticing it is often, it's definitely the place to start, but then in my experience, often just noticing it helps really diminish it. You know, usually it's not eradicated completely or it comes up again, but just the ability to notice that judgment as it's present is extremely useful. You know, for me, with the discipline of saying, okay, this is a person that historically I found it hard to, you know, keep my cool with when I'm talking to them. Okay, like I'm gonna factor that into the equation when I'm talking to them. I'm watching everything I do. Am I going over the top here? What, you know, wherever it might be. And so, you know, you don't have to wake up tomorrow and feel complete love and connection to every person, let alone the few people in the room that you didn't like so much and weren't showing you a lot of affection either. But just noticing that intention is present in the interaction, even if it's still there next time you see them, should help with that kind of thing. And you'll start to notice it, you know, elsewhere. I mean, there are other people in the room, some of whom I'm sure you like and some of whom you won't like, and maybe you'll notice that, you know, at this kind of situation in the future. So, because it's very strange, somehow by really imagining the details of a very specific situation, your like subconscious unlocks the way to apply whatever you learn in a situation that its details look very different. You know, it was night instead of day, and it was a different person. But anyway, somehow you figure that out. So anyway, good work with the technique and keep it up. Oh, yes.
If I could go back to the discussion before the judgment discussion, what came to mind, because I think that what I heard was you saying that it was when you were sitting and meditating on what you needed to do, it became very clear. But then the real world situation may not be so clear, right? I thought two occasions of mine whereby I was up against two very difficult situations. And so I meditated beforehand or really processed another one way beforehand. And so I felt very much integrity in how I believed. And so when I approached those situations, they were like loose cannons. These other people were like loose cannons. I never expected a threat to come. I never expected something else to come or total defensiveness to come from this other person. But I stayed calm and in the belief that what I stood by and stood for was true and kind. And that seemed to help me get through that difficult situation. Because the real world is never like the sit world. I mean, you know, because you never know when you're interacting with other people how they're going to respond. But if you stay where you belong, in your stand, in a kind stand, then I think it does work out. And it worked out both ways. One, I was safe, and the second one, the woman finally understood. So.
That's great. I had a similar kind of thing happening insofar as initially when I did this, my measure of what I needed to work with in terms of things that weren't going so well was whether or not people were upset with me. Because often that was justified and I had some work to do, and I'm sure I still do have some work to do, but since I've kind of worked through some of the bigger and gross issues, I've had situations where someone is upset with me and so I'm like, okay, I should probably review this. But then on reviewing it, I'm like, okay, no, like that, I acted very reasonably and was very kind and, you know, had the right intentions and spoke correctly and had, you know, a good, trustworthy perspective, and they were still upset with me. And so that's been tricky to kind of like trust myself that sometimes the way things seem are not the way that they are, you know. And I think if you do this technique repeatedly, which I would encourage you to do, you know, set aside a time every night maybe to do this technique, or, you know, once a week or something like that. As you do it regularly, things will get more complicated and messy, and hence the barrage of options with this technique. But yes. Andrea, did you have your hand up?
No, but I did have something to say. So
Go for
thank you. I was also intrigued by what Ted said about, you know, coming to clarity is something and sit and then having the real life be different. And I've had that situation come up with my sister, you know, making a decision of how, you know, coming to a very clear idea of how I'm going to communicate with her, and then getting into the situation and having, you know, things just whirl out of control, I guess. And so what I found was really helpful with that was less deciding on what I was going to do, but how I was going to be. Instead of, and just deciding to be open and clear and maintain my boundaries, which would be, you know, not anything that I would ask her to respect, because I know that she can't. So I would just say that to myself, you know, I'm maintaining my boundary now, and she's, you know, not exactly respecting it. And I'm not going to say anything about that, because it won't do any good, you know, but just to have that intention. So to decide how I was going to be instead of what I was going to say gave me a firm groundwork to live on.
Yes.
It's funny because with this practice, I think like the word intention is one that maybe some people will be like, ooh, I don't know about that one. Or, you know, like Jesse's report of, you know, something that came out for her was like, I want to be, I'm paraphrasing here, but, you know, connected and loving and, you know, not judging of people. And so if I just came in here and said, Jesse, today's technique, I'd like you to be connected and loving, have that intention, go for it. You know, I mean, that's a technique, but it would seem awfully presumptuous of me, especially if I said it to just Jesse. But somehow when we do this practice, we come to a real clarity for ourselves about what our intentions are, what our values are, and who we want to show up as. And that's not something either that someone else can tell us, or that when they do tell us, you know, at least if someone did to me what I was joking about doing to Jesse, I'd be like, oh, I don't know about this. I'd be kind of angry with them. But we do this and we find for ourselves, I really value being on time, or I really value being honest, or really speaking kindly, even in difficult situations, or whatever it might be, and celebrating that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, to me at least.
Being rather than doing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Good. So I think that there's a lot of talk about this technique, which has many options. And if you'd like to know more, as I said, definitely go buy The Mind Illuminated. It has the chapter at the end about it with, Culadasa's particular slant on it, which is about increasing mindfulness in daily life, which is very helpful. But I think maybe we'll have just a quick stretch break and then do some more practice. So feel free to move your body in a way that feels good to you. And as you're ready, come to a seated posture. And again, kind of establish that relaxation before we begin. And we'll begin this sit by allocating just a few minutes to do the technique that we worked with earlier, of reviewing our day and using those events to become better people and be more mindful. And so really practice trusting yourself and your own intuition of what would be useful for you at this time. If you'd like, feel free to continue working with that technique, processing the events of your day in a way that's useful to you. But when you feel ready, transition into a mode of practice that's not based so much in narratives or stories or perspectives. If you have any kind of observation practice that you're familiar with, that you like or that works for you, I invite you to make use of that. I'll be guiding a observation technique that works for me. But in general, it's important that we take some time after we do this technique just to kind of rinse off all of the views and stories and narratives that we have from doing that technique of reviewing our day. Just returning something simple like the breath. Bring your attention to your abdomen. In particular, any sensations associated with breathing at that location. Just stay with those sensations for the next few moments. Really noticing in detail, as much as you can, all of the sensations that are present at that location. If you find that you're distracted, just take a moment to appreciate that you noticed that you're distracted. Feeling how good it feels to be present in this moment. And then returning to the sensations associated with breathing at your abdomen. Now take this opportunity to move your attention throughout your whole body. If you've ever done a body scanning practice before, feel free to use a order that you feel familiar with. Bringing your attention to your head, very top, feeling the sensations at that location. And gently bringing your attention down through your face, feeling the sensations there, your neck, right shoulder, top of the right arm, elbow, lower part of the right arm, the right hand, all the fingers. Just feeling what's at each of these locations. Whole right arm, left shoulder, top of the left arm, elbow, lower part of the left arm, left hand and all its fingers, whole left arm, both arms, top of the chest at the right, top of the chest at the left, middle of the chest at the right, middle of the chest at the left, bottom of the chest at the right, the abdomen, the left side of the abdomen, the left side of your body, right side of your body, top of your back, middle of your back, bottom of your back, top of the right leg, circling around the whole limb, kneecap on the right leg, bottom of the right leg, right foot, whole right leg, top of the left leg, circling around the whole limb, the kneecap, bottom of the left leg, feet, all its toes, both feet, whole lower half of your body, whole upper half of your body, whole of your body. Feel what that's like. Have attention and awareness over the whole of your body. Then bring attention back to your abdomen. Noticing the sensations of breathing associated at that location. And yet still keeping an awareness of the whole body, even as our attention watches, moment to moment, sensations associated with breathing. Noticing if that's different than practice of putting your attention at your abdomen just a few moments ago. Just stay with this balance of attention at the abdomen and awareness of the whole body for just a few moments. And bring your attention to the room. Noticing the sounds on the left side of the room and beyond. Noticing the sounds on the right side of the room and beyond. Noticing what's above you. If there are any sounds there or if there's silence. Noticing what's below you. If there are any sounds coming from the ground. Noticing sounds in front of you, behind you. Noticing the sounds throughout the whole room. If you have your eyes closed, just gently open your eyes. Noticing what's on the left side of your vision, on the right side of your vision, top of your vision, at the bottom, what's in front of you. Noticing if you can see anything behind you or the absence, for me at least. How strange that is. Noticing the whole field of vision. Noticing the whole field of vision and every sound that you can hear. Bring attention to your body and notice where you can feel in your body and how far that stretches out. Where the boundaries of feeling for your body are, how they relate to your sense of space in the room. Particular feeling, the exact limit that you can feel. Right at the very edge. And bring attention to your whole sense of space, all of the sounds, all of the sights, everything that you can feel in your body. With your eyes open, return attention to your body while keeping awareness on all of the sounds in the room and all of the things that you're seeing with your eyes. You can scan your body or just maintain a global attention on your body, whatever works for you. While being aware of the subtle changes that happen in our visual and auditory field, using the power of awareness. Noticing if this experience is any different than when you had attention on your body just a few minutes ago. Noticing how, even with your attention on the sensations in your body, you can't but help but be aware of the motions in the room and the changes in the sounds in the world around you. Tuning into that quality of change and unexpectedness. And check in with your mind. Are any thoughts present, or are they absent? Are there any images coming to mind, or any emotions? Bringing your attention to your subjective experience. There's no need to label or judge what's happening, just bringing your attention there and letting that clarify itself. Return to your objective experience of the world, letting your attention roam between the sights that you see and sounds that you hear, sensations in your body, all while keeping awareness for your own mind. Noticing if that's any different than your experience of the room a few minutes ago. Finally, just drop the intention to have any kind of focus space at all. Let whatever come into your awareness that comes into your awareness. Whether it's objective or subjective, visual, auditory, or somatic. a moment, I'm going to ring the bell, and if you're connected to this sense of awareness that we've cultivated over the past few minutes, just try to stay with that while still letting yourself think or talk. See if anything changes when you can interact verbally, think. See if you can stay with whatever kind of presence you've cultivated. Good work, everyone. Just cultivated very broad state of awareness and the ability to move your attention throughout your experience. The teacher that I talked about earlier, Culadasa, defines mindfulness as the optimal interaction between attention and awareness. I like that. I think if you think about the events that you had during the day and the ones that didn't go so well, maybe our attention was caught up in our own views or some circumstance outside of us. We weren't so aware of the whole situation. And maybe the events that did go very well, we had a good sense of where we were placing our attention and where our awareness could go broadly, even if we didn't use those terms. That's often the case, what's happening, at least in my experience. So at this point, I'd like to take any questions. I know I took you through a whirlwind there. I like to keep things fast because I'm a thinker, and if I don't switch things up, I get bored or distracted. And also in particular, really trying to build up a broad sense of awareness from starting with something very small and then just getting as big as you can, and then seeing how those relate to each other. So I wanted to give you a little taste of that. Yeah, any comments or reports or questions about anything that we've talked about or done tonight?
I'm just trying to summarize it, in my head. I mean, you described it real well, the balance between attention and awareness. And you're exactly right. You're not always fully there, but good news, you can go back and look at it on replay and try again.
Mm-hmm.
That's a kind of interesting concept.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. It's just like having replay, or for me, certain video games or movies come to mind. And I think our lives aren't unlike something like Groundhog Day. At least for me, I mean, even if and this is what's so nice about a monastery is the schedule is the same. So most of the time, so you can just wake up at the same time and have the same problems every day until you fix them. So when things are different out in the world, that's hidden a little bit, but we tend to have the same issues until we finally figure out, oh, that's what's going on here. And we all have things like that. So.
What do you mean when you say no self?
Well, just to be clear, I haven't had some big experience of no self. Well, that sentence kind of seems silly anyway. I having some big experience of no self, but
Yeah.
so even though I'm not completely awakened, I think we all have a sense of what this means, and that was really on display tonight because for the first hour we kind of worked with, our own day and our own stories about what happened to us today, and then we talked about what our values were and our sense of integrity around who we are, and there's some really lovely people in this room that shared their experiences. And that's a very important part of our experience. And yet there's also just this whole other world that has nothing to do with who we think we are, who other people think we are, that we can really access when we pay attention to something like our breathing or our body or sounds in the room. Things just feel the way they feel. And there's still some stories in that, something like the inhalation and exhalation, those are stories, and nostrils and the images that come to mind of our body or the space around us, those are kind of deeper stories that are a little harder to notice, but they become kind of prominent when we do a technique like that. But even past that, there's still just we're getting closer to a world without stories when we do an observation technique. So that's mostly what I mean, is the absence of stories, or at least them being less prominent. I certainly had stories come up when I was doing the technique, but they were in the background and I kind of knew that they were there and I wasn't buying into them. I was definitely buying into them in the first half. But that's good because there's also a role to stories, which is showing up as our best selves in the world. And only you can really tell that story. I like that part too. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else have any questions or reports? And do people have a sense of, this concept of attention and awareness that Culadasa brings to mind has really been a key aspect of my practice in the last months since I've read that book. And I kind of just gave it to you. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'd be happy to clarify that. It's the field of vision is a good metaphor for it, in that there's a kind of locus that we can see very clearly and have detail. And then there's the rest of the field of vision that we can still see even when we're looking at one specific point. And our whole experience is like that. We can place our attention anywhere in our experience, whether it's the thoughts that we're having or, that's what it means when, it's one of these kind of phrases that you either really like or you don't. If people say, meditators saying, oh, you're in your head, what they mean is that you're placing your attention in your subjective experience in your head, whether it's, our visual experience tends to be here or our thoughts somewhere in the head. You're placing your attention there and you don't have much awareness of everything else. And so when we move our attention to our abdomen, one way to look at that is we're in a certain way getting out of our heads, and we still have awareness of everything that's going on in our heads, but we're practicing not being stuck in our own views. And strangely enough, that helps us really live out our views even more thoroughly when they're like good and valuable views for the world. since there are no questions or reports, maybe just take a moment to reflect on the sort of challenge that I issued a few minutes ago, which is to notice how your experience has changed since we shifted out of the guidance and into more conversation-based medium. See if anything's changed for you. Reflect on that for a minute. I think the whole point of the mindful review technique that I did earlier is there's a tendency to, at least that I have, to associate meditation practice with a seated posture and quiet and certain locations, certain times of day, certain beliefs that I have. And then there's other times of the day where I'm not seated, there's not silence, I'm probably talking, or someone's talking, and there's something to do, and there's a context, and I can't really think about what I believe, except the belief that happens to be relevant in that moment. And for much of my practice, I've kind of let what I've done during the seated practice go somewhere else and kind of have an imbalance between attention and awareness. So even if I had good concentration, following my breath, or whatever it was that I was doing, that would just not be present when I was having a difficult interaction with someone, or, you know, trying to do something that was really important to me, or whatever it might be. There was just this disconnect where there was the meditation and there was everything else. And what the mindful review technique, and hopefully this other technique that we practice at the end of just broadening our awareness, really try to show from different angles, is there's no difference. They're the same thing. Meditation is just what you already do. Same capacities of attention awareness are present when we can speak and when we're not speaking, when we're sitting, when we're standing, whatever it might be. And the more we can kind of cut through that conceptual difference of, you know, oh, there's this guy over here that has short hair and wearing a weird gray thing and is in lotus posture, and there's me doing my thing where I work and I, you know, whatever it is that we identify as. The more we can kind of cut through this view that our meditation practice is different than our daily life, the more benefit we'll have in each of them. You know, we'll be better people when we're acting in the world, and we'll also find it easier to, you know, do concentration exercises and have deep insight experiences. And, you know, there wasn't really a lot to say about my solo retreat because I just did a technique and kept it going and it went well. And that was because I didn't have all this like baggage of, oh God, I like really regret that I did this thing before the retreat that I can't talk to this person about. You know, in a certain way, they were just the same thing. I was just doing what needed to be done. And so we just practiced that a little bit and noticing the difference between, you know, I hope some of you were able to connect to this really broad sense of awareness of everything that's happening outside and in our bodies and our minds, just letting that arise, and then still bringing that into talking and judging what I'm saying and judging what you think, and, you know, this kind of discursive thinking. Can we keep that so that they're all the same somehow? The more we can do that, the better for ourselves and the world. this word spirituality is so rife with connotations. It's like, oh, those are the spiritual people and they're weird and they have their things that are different than me and I don't like it. I'm kind of parodying my own previous perspectives here and ones that still come up from time to time. But the more that I do this practice, which to me is a spiritual practice, the more I see that my whole life has been doing the same thing that I'm doing now. It's just a bit more intentional and constructed and seen, and particular exercises like following my breathing, but it's just the same thing. There's no difference between spirituality and ordinary life. I think everyone in this room has things that they're doing in their life that they really care about, and they're throwing themselves into that and in a way that feels good to them, and you're doing it. So I know people in this room, you're definitely doing it.
Mhm.
So that brings our guidance for the evening to a close. If there are any, I have a few things to mention. In terms of, we have a retreat with Shinzen this weekend, this Saturday, up at our location in Johnson. And so we'd love to see you there for that. That'll be from noon to 6. You can find out more on our website. And the following day, Soryu will be back leading the Sunday sit from his long extended solo retreat. So you can come and see him again. And if you're new to the group, he's our head teacher and really wonderful person that exemplifies this practice. So I'll be happy to have him back. And just logistically, since he'll be back, we try to mention in our emails and sometimes at our event that it's very important that you not use synthetic fragrances at our events. And I've created a guide to how to do that. If you're new to the group, then just check that out. Sign up for our email list, and when you get our emails, there's a box at the bottom that says being fragrance free, and you can just click. There's a link to find out what you need to do to take care of that and make sure that Soryu and other people with that sensitivity aren't exposed to something that's difficult for them. So does anyone have any events that they know about that are of service to the world? Jennifer? Or just a comment?
I just have 3 events. Tomorrow, there's a vigil at the Unitarian Universalist Church for the people who were killed in Orlando last night. And that's going to be from 5 to 7 p.m. as far as I recollect. On Wednesday night, there's going to be a documentary at the Champlain Senior Center, which is about racism in Vermont. That I can't remember what time it starts. Maybe somebody else remembers, but I think it might be, I think it's like 7 maybe, but it might be earlier. And then Friday night, there's going to be another vigil of people walking. And I believe that it starts either at the library here in Burlington or at the church beside it, which is for the folks who were killed in the church in Charleston a year ago. And that I think we'll be walking down Church Street. I don't have the time on that, but I believe all of them are on Facebook events. And so if anyone's particularly interested in finding out about one or another, just come up to me after this and connect with me and I'll make sure you've got the right information.
And there's even voting to the Black Lives Matter.
Oh, right, that's on Saturday.
Saturday morning, so you can go to that, and then head over to Shinzen.
Oh, yeah, Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Saturday morning, the Black Lives Matter Vermont is having an organizing meeting from 9 to noon. Yeah, isn't that?
Did you have something to say about that, Justin?
No, just something about, was it Tuesday that there was a movie?
The movie is Wednesday night at the Champlain Senior Center.
And Nick?
the teacher you've been mentioning, Culadasa, is coming to the Northeast next week. He lives in Arizona and comes to the Northeast like once a year. We'll be teaching a retreat at the Omega Institute in New York starting next Sunday, I think, or maybe 5 or 7 days. And it's also going to do a 2-day event in Massachusetts, July 1st and 2nd, I believe. But his website is Dharma Treasure. So I don't know if it's .org.com, but you can find more information on there.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I wish I could go, but I cannot. So, although, yeah, this book's really good. I don't think I mentioned that.
Really? Which book?
Yeah. So, yes, and hopefully one day Soryu will write a great book like that. So, anyway. Okay, well, thank you all for coming tonight. It was a pleasure to have you all here. And as I said, feel free to email me if you have any further questions or comments. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Just a second.
Yes, you do.